Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how librarians can foster collaborative learning. And we have a special guest today, Shannon Miller, who's going to share some of her stories, advice, and tips on how she's brought collaborative learning to her school. So feel free to follow us each on Twitter. Our Twitters are right there. Also, if you want to learn more about the EdWeb community and become a member, their link is at the bottom of this slide as well. My name's Marissa. I'm a senior at the University of New Hampshire, majoring in marketing and entrepreneurial studies. I've been working at Unruly Studios since this past July, and my current position is as a social and content manager. So, Shannon, do you want to tell us a little about yourself now?
And I love that you're a senior in college. Like, you rock. So you're going to do great things, my friend.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
My name is Shannon, and I am the district teacher, librarian, and innovation director at Van Meter Community Schools in Iowa. And I also serve as the Future Ready Librarians spokesperson and on the national faculty for Future Ready Schools. And you can read more about me there if you would like. I've written some books and I do lots of presenting and lots of work like this, but my favorite job is definitely working with the kids at Van Meter. We're a kindergarten, well, we're now a preschool to 12th grade building. And so you'll see lots of stories about the kids and just different things that you can hopefully bring back too. So you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I blog at the Library Voice. So feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, Shannon literally does it all, so she's amazing. So we're going to start off with a quick poll too, because we want to learn more about who's in our audience. So let us know what your current role is in education. You should see the poll now. It's very cool. A lot of librarians so far. Good.
Couple
others.
That's awesome.
Great. And some K through 12 classroom teachers. It's amazing. Awesome. District librarian. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing. It's great to know who's in the audience so we can cater to all of you. Great. So to start things off officially, Shannon, do you want to tell us a little about your role at your school and your students?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about Van Meter. So the great thing I think about our school is that we are a preschool to 12th grade building. We're in rural Iowa, and so right outside of Des Moines, getting less rural all the time. And just lots of great collaboration. We've used technology. We've been one-to-one at our school. This is coming up on the 13th year, which is crazy to think about. And so all of our kids have their own device, and we just find the best things we can to bring to our kids. If it's experiences with, not even just technology, but STEM and innovation and learning activities, and really try to tie in things that we can do with our kids too, to help them collaborate with others around the world. And as we watched, last year, everybody start staying home about this time, things shifted a lot. But even though we have things that are different, we all wear masks and we try to socially distance. We've been back in school since August 11th and have had just a really great year with our kids. My son in the middle even got to go to the state champion football game. And so it was really neat to be able to see everything that we have done and also just think ahead on how this is going to truly change, I think, education and things for good for the future.
Awesome. That's great. Before we dive into all your fun examples and stuff, why don't you give us a quick definition on what collaborative learning is?
Yeah, definitely. So when we think about collaboration and just what we do, with teachers and collaboration, because really that's where it starts, is how are we building that collaborative community that we want, that environment. And we know that collaboration is the process of two or more people or organizations working together to complete a task or achieve a goal. And it can be things like cooperation and working together and teamwork, all these things that, we as teachers want to do and librarians, but we also want to instill those qualities in our kids. And so collaborative learning is defined as the educational approach of using groups to enhance learning through working together. Groups of 2 or more learners work together to solve problems, complete tasks, or learn new concepts. And at Van Meter, as you'll see, we have collaboration as something we really look to use and enhance and just instill in our kids for, it doesn't matter if they're our preschool kids or if they're seniors, but we want them to have these skills, now today, but even in their future as well.
Yeah, I really like how you said you want to start with like the teachers first with the collaboration because it kind of helps build that community, which we'll talk about a little later on, but it's a really good stepping stone to like make your school community in a great place. So what benefits have you seen from having collaboration in your classrooms with your students?
Yeah, well, there's just tons of benefits. These are just some that we think of. And I'm sure that if you are a librarian or a teacher, administrator, whatever your role might be, you work with kids in different collaborative ways. And we work with them to develop leadership skills, to improve the knowledge and skills by turning learning into an active process. Of course, one of the most important things is just fostering those relationships, not only with their, close friends that they have, but with a variety of people. We want them to collaborate with the kids in their rooms, within their school, and now we can even collaborate, globally too. I also think that one of the things, from our kids being super collaborative, and this was something I noticed probably 10 years ago after we were one-to-one for a few years, is how our kids are so much better at speaking to one another, at sharing things, at, getting up and being able to not only listen to what their classmates are doing, but also to really participate as a speaker or sharing as well. It promotes learning from other viewpoints. It supports listening to criticism and advice, enhances retention. It teaches teachers to think quickly. I think that is so good. And also that the cooperation that we want. And we want our kids, to be collaborative and to be able to cooperate and have a lot of those skills. When we talk a lot about, the social emotional learning of our kids, that's one great thing that we can even work with our counselors and work together with our classroom teachers, even just to work on the skills of collaboration as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you encourage collaboration at your school?
Well, that is something too that, it doesn't just start with, like you go to school and you say, like, I'm just going to like be in this collaborative environment, because there's a lot of research, there's a lot of information, and just different organizations, especially as, our role as librarians, what we can do. And so when we look at our standards through like AASL, a big part of our standards is how librarians are expected to, really instill that collaboration. Like, how can we teach some of those communication skills, and we can teach that collaboration, or we can cultivate that community of collaboration that we want. And so that's a big part of what we do and within our standards. We also look at the ISTE standards. And when we look at these, there's different standards for teachers and there's different standards even for our kids. But collaborator is a part of all of them. And it fits into, not just what we're doing to communicate, but even into like the curriculum, how we want to build those instructional partnerships, and how we want to, we're talking about technology, how we want to infuse that and really work on collaboration. And it directly ties into as well the standards that we have as future ready librarians. And even though these are the standards for librarians, for future ready schools, there are standards for whatever role you are within a building. And collaboration, again, falls into that curriculum instruction and assessment, but also it falls into just being a leader. How are we leading from the library? How are we looking at that collaborative leadership of working with our teachers and working with our administrators, and especially working with our kids and even their families. And so collaboration is a big part of this. And when we think about our learners, like within any of these standards, the learner is the center of why we're doing this, right? And so the learner is centered, and we want to be able to, not only inspire our learners today, but again, get them to where they're inspired to be collaborative too as adults. Now, one thing that I do when we first start back to school is every year I make up something that tells the teacher like what I can do for them. And if our teachers don't know what we can do as librarians, like how can we support them? How can we work with them to help with collaborative learning? How can we support them when it comes to literacy? Then we won't have that collaborative, that environment that we want unless we really teach our teachers what that looks like. And so a couple years ago, I made this, and it was kind of like a little movie program, and I made tickets and I tied them to like movie popcorn and candy, and I passed them out to all the teachers because I wanted them to truly understand like everything I could do to be able to support them so we could support our kids. And I always laugh because this was very early into like my career as being a librarian. But one day I was like, I feel like Julie, like the cruise director, because we just do everything. And I think that's a great thing though about collaboration is that it might look different now, but it's something that we need to make time for. And we need to make time for the collaboration that we do first and foremost with our teachers, because when we're planning with them, when we're sitting down and we're looking at like their curriculum and we're looking at special events throughout the year and we're tying in directly to all these great things that they have going on, we want to make sure that we have those skills and relationships set so we can then take it into the collaborative experiences that we can give our kids. And so a couple of things that I have used at our school that have worked really well are these two Google Docs. And I started this years ago, and I just made like a Google Doc, and it has a column for each month. And then it also has a row for each grade level. And the teachers are responsible for adding in what they're working on and how we could kind of come up with a collaborative learning experience for our kids through these activities. And when we started doing this, it really made the teachers more accountable for seeing that collaboration wasn't like an option. It was just something that we did at Van Meter. And when we truly embraced this, it really shifted what we did within our school and how we were teaching our kids more collaboratively, more innovative. And it's neat because, even we use Journey's curriculum for our reading, and taking this and breaking it down so we could look at really closely, like, okay, what technology resources are we using? How are we tying this into picture books or nonfiction? What is the connection to the curriculum that we might pull in? And doing this has really helped us with a lot of these really, really rich, just amazing projects that we've done at Van Meter. And I just want to show you a couple just to kind of get the ball rolling on what it looks like for our kids then. And so through that collaboration, these are probably a couple of my favorites. We had the chance to use Bloxels at our school. And I remember getting Bloxels, and I remember just looking at it, wondering how it worked. A lot of the things that we get, I always think like, I am not an expert in this, but I'm going to learn how to do it. And I'm going to learn with my kids. I'm going to collaborate with them to really learn how to use it really good and tie it into what we're doing. And so Bloxels contacted me. They were in Iowa for a conference, and they contacted me to see if they wanted us to have a big board game jam. And of course I said yes. The kids were so excited, and they came to Van Meter for the whole day, and they worked with our fifth graders, and they wrote stories, and the kids developed characters, and they became really good at just working together to create video games, because that's what you do with Bloxels. And so then I took that group of kids, and I think about this a lot as I'm planning things, like how can they be teachers to my other kids? And even though this year it looks different, your kids can still zoom in with other classrooms. They can still, zoom in even a student or a class together. And so even though the kids can't travel like they usually do and work together, it still has worked really well. And so they worked with our fourth graders, and we went even down to like our third graders. And then we got to our second graders, and our second graders were getting ready to go to the play, A Diary of a Worm. And so we actually had a Skype with the author, and she knew that our goal was for the kids to write stories like The Diary of a Worm, but they were going to write fractured stories around this, and they were going to make up their own. And so they actually made it into a video game. And again, having those fifth grade peer helpers and that collaboration, I think that's one of the really cool things about our school, because they're able to collaborate together. So then we did it with our first graders, and then the kindergarten teachers came to me, and I was a little nervous, but it was amazing. And we had it around, it was about this time of the year, and we were learning about Jane Goodall. And so we were going to have a theme where they were explorers. And so the kids, they made their own characters, and they did an amazing job. They even wrote stories within Bloxels to create their video games. And as you can see, they just loved collaborating together. So that was one of my favorites. Now, we also have been using a lot with 3D printers, and kind of the same thing, like 3D printers 10 years ago were not my thing. Even though we had one, I wrote a grant for one, I never got very good at it, and it was really tricky for us to use. And so when we heard about these printers that cost around $200, I got one actually at my house, and I got really good at it. And I went to our parent group and asked them for some money, and we bought 5 for the school. And so my fifth graders, again, were the ones, and our high school kids and middle school kids, they were the ones that helped us kind of kick them off and become really good at them. And they just kept them in their classrooms. And I love that, because I wanted it just to be part of what we were doing within the classroom. Like if they were collaborating maybe on a project, this one was an English project, and they had to do something where they could show idioms. And so these girls thought, well, could we use the 3D printer? And so through that collaboration together, they were able to figure out how to do that. But when our kindergarten teachers, one of them, Molly, she came to me, and they were studying butterflies. And at Van Meter, especially our younger grades, the kids really drive a lot of what they learn about. And so her class wanted to learn about butterflies. And so we read the book, Velma Gratch and the Way Cool Butterfly. And then they did research over the different butterflies that were found in the book. And they voted, and they picked out 5 that they were actually going to make 3D prints out of. And so we drew the butterflies really big on paper, and then the kids collaborated together to fill the wings in with just amazing designs. And one of the best parts was just seeing how different each one of the students created their butterfly wings. Then I took pictures and I put it into a Google Slide so I could upload it into a program called Selva. And with Selva, it takes your picture. It could be a picture like a photograph. It could be a picture like the kids drew, and it actually turns it into an STL print that or file that you can print then. And so this was the butterfly that was actually printed, and the kids are watching this with our principal, Cody Tibbetts, and they were so fun because they got to sit there and watch it. And some of them printed for like 3 hours, but they collaborated with their friends, and they wanted to also be able to see what they were making. And so using the app called Object Viewer, it's an app from Merge, you can actually take a 3D print, upload it into Object Viewer, and the kids can then see what they are going to print before it's even printed. So it was just an amazing project of collaboration. And, think about like how that started. It was the teacher coming to me and us collaborating on, what we could make it look like, but then really having the kids in charge of their learning. And we included the art teacher on that project to help us with the butterflies. And it was so much fun at the end, to see what they had created. Just one of my favorites. And then the last thing I want to share right now is we're so excited because one thing that I learned about last year at FETC was unruly splats, and I could not wait to bring them to Van Meter. Of course, then COVID hit, and so we couldn't start them as soon as we thought we would. But we have now, in the last couple of months, kicked off just really great brainstorming and collaboration. And our fifth graders, again, we're teaching them how to use them. We've even gotten some help from our friends at Unruly Splats to then bring it to Van Meter in a big way. And so our kids are super excited. Our PE teachers are excited about this collaboration, and we just cannot wait to do even more fun projects. They're playing a game called Foursquare here, and or Four Corners, and we're gonna tell you guys more about it later.
Yeah. So great. So now we're gonna pause for a moment, and then in the chat, if you want to type in any collaborative learning activities or examples that you have, we would love to hear a little bit from you. But Shannon, I love how you tie in collaboration with technology and like new technologies, and you're not afraid to try something else new, because we always preach kind of a similar thing with Unruly Splats is some people like, I don't know anything about block coding. How am I supposed to bring this into my classroom? The thing is, like, you don't, and it's okay to learn with your students and like learn as you go, which you've done with a lot of other technologies you've brought into the classroom. So it's great to see that it's kind of a system that works for anything. So awesome.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, like, when people ask, like, how do you find time to like learn all these new things? Like, I don't have to learn about them all myself. I can collaborate with my teachers. I can collaborate, especially with my kids, and they can figure it out. You know, that's the great thing about, I think, just using technology. And I saw that. I think that's what's scary sometimes, not knowing how to use them. And I totally agree. And, you know, I work with our teachers, and that's one thing that we've worked on really, really hard, is part of just that process of collaboration. And I think working with your teachers on that is helping them with that fear. Like, we have to be really brave, and we don't have to do everything perfect. We don't have to know how to use it. And it's totally okay if it fails. I've had things fail, you guys, all the time. And, you know, things from, we just got drones at our school, just a few like little like inexpensive ones, and just things that like I have no idea even sometimes how it's going to look with my kids, but you just have to dive in and just try to be really brave.
And sometimes mistakes lead to funny moments, or definitely a lesson learned. So that's awesome. Great. So we're going to move on. So collaboration, it kind of goes hand in hand with leadership, as you mentioned earlier. So how do you empower students to lead their own learning at Van Meter?
Yeah, we have some really great examples just on letting the kids really share their passions and embrace them through learning projects, speaking and making. And one thing that I've always done with my kids, you know, and told them from the very beginning of me being at Van Meter, was to have their own voice. And I've had, these are a couple of just stories about just individual students that have really stuck out. I've had a lot over the years, but kind of two more recent ones. So I had this little guy named Tommy, and Tommy came to me when he was in fourth grade, and Tommy wanted to knit some hats for cats. That's always a tongue twister. He wanted to knit some hats for cats. And so I said, okay, like, I never say like, no, we can't figure it out. And I went then and I thought, well, who do I know that knows how to knit? And I remembered that my friend Caitlin in Hawaii knows how to knit, and I knew she had a knitting club. And so I reached out to Caitlin and I told Tommy, I said, I have a connection and we are going to connect with my friend's knitting club. She's in Hawaii, so it's going to work perfect, like during your lunch hour. And we're going to see if we can learn how to knit some hats for cats this year. And so first, it was so great because they taught Tommy how to do some lei knitting. But then it turned into just Tommy and I working together, that even somebody from a retirement community came and actually then worked with Tommy on knitting his little hats for cats. And so just something like that, you know, really listening and thinking about those connections that you have, like who could you connect with? The next story is my friend Molly, and Molly was in 5th grade at the time. And Molly drew these amazing dolls called Molly dolls, and she drew them for everyone, like scads of them. And everybody that got one, we were really lucky. And so she'd wrap each one up, and everyone had a name, and she would bring them to school and give them to the teachers and to the kids. And anytime that she had that she could, that's what she would be working on. And it didn't matter if we were creating in Scratch or if she was doing some stop motion, it always had a Molly doll in it. So Molly's mom is our art teacher, and she came to me with Molly, and Molly wanted to start a Facebook group. And I was bringing the dolls when I traveled. Molly gave me a whole bunch, and I would bring them with me. And so she called it Molly Dolls. And every time I would travel, she'd give me Molly Dolls with a little sticker on the back where people then could comment like where they were from, where the Molly doll actually was. And so places all over the world were posting when I would take the Molly dolls, people in Texas and New York, and my friend actually from Poland. Like, it was so much fun for Molly to track down where these were coming from. Well, then my friends at Buncy, I was in London for Bet, and my friends from Buncy, they saw the Molly dolls, and they took Molly's dolls and her ideas, and they actually made stickers. And this is my Molly doll right here that Molly made for me. And you could never give her advice on what to draw. She just drew your doll for you. And so that's my Molly doll. And they made it into stickers for Molly. Well, I went home from London and I told Molly about it, and Molly was really upset because they didn't ask Molly for permission. And so we met up with Buncy, and they showed Molly the dolls, and she said, I love them, but I really want my own artwork to be in Buncy. And so we worked with Buncy, and I want to share this video because it shows the day that Molly actually saw her artwork in Buncy, how she collaborated with Buncy.
What is it? They really did turn my dolls into sticker. Oh my gosh.
How cool is that, Molly?
Did. That's so cool.
What do you think about that, Mom?
Oh my god. That's so cool. Oh my god.
How many are there?
That's crazy. That's a lot. There's a lot. Molly dolls. They actually did.
Wait, so cool.
How did she sign the contract in order to do it?
Yeah,
awesome.
She said I signed the contract in order to do it. I mean, that was a huge, huge deal for everybody that day. And so now when you go into Buncy, you can actually go to the category Molly Dolls, and you can create then with her original artwork as well. And it's so much fun, you know, to see what that meant to Molly, because not only was it just so cool, I also have an art degree. And so I love kids being creative and just doing projects like this that don't even really require technology, just thinking and being artistic with their hands and their mind. And so it was fun to see what she would post, you know, on her Facebook page, and she would share to us. But I really loved when I would take her dolls and what it truly meant to her. Here I am at the Tower of London, and she thought that was so cool, and being able to track them all over with like people from Bet, and so like the creators of Scratch and Flipgrid and all kinds of places, you know, had Molly dolls, and she thought that was really neat. But the biggest thing for Molly, and I bet for her family too, when her mom saw this, and Molly had never made her own doll before. And at the end of the year, you know, Molly felt so empowered and like such a star that she made her own Molly doll. And then she posted, "This is me, Molly." And that was a really big deal for Molly, but also, you know, think about what those projects can mean to your kids. It's like they make a lasting impact on that collaboration that you can do, and just how you can empower like kids to, you know, really have their own voice and to feel welcome to come and talk to you about that. We have a high school kid right now who is writing his second book. He self-published one when he was a freshman. He's a sophomore now and writing one, and he is so talented. And just, you know, even just listening to them, sitting there trying to find resources and connections, like that can make a huge, huge difference in the lives of the kids that you work with.
Yeah, and I love how you include their passions. Like education's about learning what you're supposed to learn, but when they express these passions and interests, I think that's really great to learn early on that you can run with your passions and be successful. So that's really awesome and an inspiring story. So great. So in the chat, if you have any activities that you've seen or examples you've used to empower your students for student-led learning, please share them in the chat now. But we can move on to the next question for you today, which is, how has student-led learning increased your students' confidence and communication skills? It definitely seemed to increase Molly's, but I'm sure but we have some more examples.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that, I mean, that's the great thing, just like I said in the beginning, is that seeing the kids when they collaborate, I think they feel empowered themselves, because it's not like they're doing like these standalone projects, that they're have to stand up. I mean, I remember being so afraid when I was little, having to stand up and report on something, or in speech class, like having to give something all by myself. And even though that's important for our kids to be able to do, like in the real world, like we collaborate with people all the time, and we want to really empower them to feel that they have a voice in all these projects that they're doing. And one really cool one that we did with our second grade one year is I got a tweet from an author who had written a book called "What Can You Do with a Toolbox?" And he wanted to know if we wanted to have a Skype with him and he could send us a couple free books. And so I looked him up, and I didn't know this, but John was actually, he's one of the kitchen cousins on HGTV. And him and Anthony, they did this book. It is so good. What Can You Do with a Toolbox? And we Zoomed with all of our second graders. And after that, the kids were so excited, and he encouraged them to be like builders, that the kids then wanted to build their own houses. And so we got some great big refrigerator houses free from like Lowe's. And we had the kids then interview, they did contracts, everything for each position of the home building. And they even had their own cute little business cards as well. These kids are in fourth grade now, and they've changed so much, but they're so cute. And then we worked with people in our community. And so we would find people that were home builders, or decorators, or painters, or electricians, like whatever role. And then they would come and work with our kids to create these amazing houses. And the collaboration that went on in that classroom, and just the community that was built that year, was just so neat. And even our high school kids, they made little curtains like in the home ec room, and they would come down and they would see what our second graders were doing. And then at the end of the year, they got selected by the STEM Council to go to the Build My Future event at the fairground. And they even came and got their houses like in a semi to take them to this, so the kids then could be the in charge people that day. I mean, look at them. They're just so cute. They had so much fun. And so I think, I love that story, that project, because even though the kids, and it was just a coincidence and just such a great one that we connected with John, but then listening to them afterwards, like listening to what they wanted to do, and then putting them, even though we were helping them, really putting them in a position where they had to be leaders. They had to collaborate with their small groups. They had to talk to these community members. They had to make decisions. And I think something like that, as simple as a refrigerator box, turned into a project that the kids will never forget.
Yeah, and I think what's awesome about that is it's fun. So it's like they're gaining all these skills without even realizing it, because they're just having so much fun doing it, that it's like second nature that they become these leaders and have this confidence because they're just excited because they had fun. So
yeah,
that's really, really cool. So moving on slightly, I like we've had conversations before where I feel like you're the librarian that always figures out the lessons plans and then brings the fun into the classroom with an activity or technology or all that. So really curious to hear how you have built that community and what advice you have for educators who are looking to build a similar school community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, just continuing to look for the opportunities, like how can we, take something Like when I learned about unruly splats, for example, at FETC, like I'm constantly thinking in my head, like, how can I take this back to Van Meter? Like, what can I do with, that technology or that STEM idea or that art idea? And I think I saw a comment in the chat about like budgets and stuff. And I know that like watching some of these projects, you probably think that I have a giant budget, and I actually do not. And something like, for example, if we used robotics or if we use 3D printing, like we don't have, enough that the whole school could use it like at one time. We might have, 12 of something or 6 of something. And I think that, that still gives the opportunity to our kids. And so I think that when you're thinking about that and you're wanting to bring these things to your kids, like think outside of the box on how you could, write a grant, or how you could maybe be in a pilot, like something like that, where you can be really innovative too on just how you can bring that collaboration. And when you're looking for those opportunities, you're supporting your teachers and you're bringing that fun and innovation and engagement to the classrooms through collaboration. You're building that, those opportunities for them. And I know for me, I'm just constantly reading, constantly looking, learning about it myself, but then thinking, how could I do this? Is this a good fit for the goals we have within our school? Is this going to bring something different to our kids that they haven't learned before? And those kind of like questions and just being open-minded about it does bring a lot of those just really good experiences and opportunities to your kids. So one project I want to tell you about when we're thinking about this, and also, building that collaboration, this is a perfect one too, because it did not require a big budget. It just required a little bit of work and a little bit of organization. But one year we were getting ready to celebrate Read for the Record, and the book was Maybe Something Beautiful. And I was so excited because I love this book and this story about how this artist, they beautified a community in California with murals. And this has happened now like all over the country, all over the world, where artists and communities have done this. And we had a big, like each grade level, a big kind of assembly during Related Arts where we shared the book and we shared the story. And we also even Skyped in my friend Susan Verde, who wrote another book, similar story called Haywall. And so it was nice to be able to, talk to the kids. And at first we were just going to do a collaborative kind of mural within our school. Well, then we started talking, and I think I even chatted with my sister, Heather, who is here today too. She's a librarian in Iowa as well. And we started to talk about like how we could make this collaborative. And we got into a Google Doc, and I just started sharing it, sharing it on social media, sharing it on my blog, talking to the kids about it. And we had like, I think about 300 people sign up that first year, where we were getting in groups of 10 and then sending our murals that the kids were creating to different places around the world. And so after the kids had their mural created, we cut it into 10 equal strips, and we gave like the dimensions, everything that we wanted the schools to do. Then we had our list and we sent it to those. You kept one piece and you sent 9 other pieces around the world to then be given to another school, and they would then create the mural that was in your school. And so in this Google Doc or Google Slides, we just kept track of where all the murals are from. And my kids were so inspired, not only by the project they were working on at Van Meter, but to see all the projects from others around the world was just so inspiring to the kids. And really, I think, built that community that we had within our school that year because of the project that we did. And we did this for 2 years. This year, we didn't do it because of COVID, but I hope we start it up again next year. And it was so neat to see, not only that diversity of the places that they went to and the different like cultures that they learned from, but I also loved how it really showed just that voice of the kids and those different groups that we have at Van Meter. Our high school kids, I love what they did. And instead of doing a big mural, the teacher actually cut it apart and each student in her class made their own chunk. And I know it was really hard for the kids in this group to give them away because they were absolutely amazing what they had done. But then to see it come back together at our school was pretty inspiring and pretty cool to see. But that definitely, it didn't cost a lot of money, just a little organization and just a whole lot of creativity and collaboration to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's a whole next level of collaboration. It starts with like the students, the teachers, and then you bring it out to like the world of collaboration. So that's really, really awesome.
I loved it.
That's amazing. Okay, so now we're going to move into how you've been using Splats for collaborative learning. But before we get into that question, do you want to describe in your own words what unruly Splats are for those who might not be familiar with the product?
Yes, absolutely. Well, with Unruly Splats, I think the big thing is how you bring together code and play. And one thing that I love is my kids love to code. I love to bring anything to our kids that incorporate code, but I love the movement piece, the fun, the collaboration that they have in creating these games. And the kids absolutely love them from like the first day that we, unboxed the Unruly Splats. And again, like I said, it was something that I wasn't an expert in, but when we got them, I brought them up to the 5th grade. They even helped me like open the boxes. And we were so lucky because our friend at Unruly Splats, Emily, she even joined the kids and she helped us in thinking through, not just the activity we did that day, but in showing us also what the kids could do to just experiment with Unruly Splats. And with this activity pack that she had sent us, I printed them off and I laid them all over the classroom, and they were able to pick them up. And after we made 4 splats, they were able then to grab some of the other games and work through them. And it was so fun to see the kids, thinking about like, especially some of them, they would think about how much movement they wanted or what the goal of the game was, how complicated they wanted it to be. And we started with our 5th graders, but we have went up and we went down with them too, just through that collaboration and just getting the kids to really think, and the teachers, just us collaborating with them as well. So we're so excited.
Yeah, and we have this video here of a classroom playing 4 splats.
Oh, now keep passing. All right, go back. Again. Should we do it again for you guys? Yeah. Do it for 1 more times.
Okay, get ready.
Go. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Which one went up?
Oh! 5 jumping jacks. All right.
I love it.
Yeah, and what's great about 4 splats is that you can also modify it like this classroom. Instead of the students getting out, they had to do jumping jacks. So you can add even more movement into it if you want to.
I love that piece. Yeah, I think that it was so fun because even our principal came up the day that we were playing it. And, he even commented like about the movement within the classroom, and it's nice because you could put your own twist on any rules. Like you can move, but you don't have to talk, or you have to say something, or like, I love the jumping jacks. And I think that really adds a nice collaborative element too.
Yeah, it's a good balance of screen time where you're coding out the game, and then playtime where you're physically moving and having fun.
Absolutely.
So it's really awesome. Yeah. Okay. So to end off today, before we get to the Q&A, we're curious, Shannon, on what tips you have for educators who want to start facilitating collaborative learning, and then if anyone in the chat has any tips as well, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Yeah, so some tips that I have for collaborative learning. I mean, collaboration again, it's a culture I think that you build first, not just with your kids, but with your teachers and with, your librarians and administrators. And it's just first and foremost, I think the relationship piece that we have. And we have to have that, not only with our teachers and our administrators and our staff, but we have to have that with our kids as well. And I think that collaborative learning, like when we're facilitating it, working together with your teachers, having that really good relationship, but being open-minded, embracing when things fail. It's going to take a lot of work, and sometimes it does take a little extra work in the beginning to set this up. But really, when your kids are in charge of things and you have this great collaborative learning going on, there are so many things that you can bring in and tie into these type of projects that you can hit from multiple subject areas, events that are happening, and just things that the kids are really going to think are special and just really remember too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Cool. So if there aren't any more tips, we can move over to the Q&A because I think we had amazing Q&A questions. So if you have any questions for us, let us know in the chat or in the question little Q&A. But some questions that popped up is, how can public libraries help school collaboration process? Do you think, Shannon?
Oh, yeah. Well, and that is a good one because like a lot of public libraries too, they might have resources that they can check out to you. And so I know in a lot of our surrounding communities, like they might have robotics, they might even have access to like 3D printers. And so things that maybe you don't have within your school, but also public libraries, a lot of times have even access to different experts. And so if you are doing a collaborative project, like reach out to them because it's not only about like the tangible resources that they might have, but they have access to other people within just the public realm and, within your community, but even globally too. And how it's a win-win, right? For public and school librarians, that collaboration too, because then you'll get your kids, more informed about the public libraries.
Yeah, and then in today's world with Zoom and like Skype, you could even, as a public librarian, like Zoom into a classroom and share a story or a piece of advice or technology. So that's great. Also, this is a good one. How do you help students work through conflicts as they collaborate? It can really get in the way of forward progress.
Again, I think that it's again a culture. It's a big goal of ours at Van Meter is that collaboration. It's one of kind of the 7 traits that we want our kids to have. And so our counselors, our like social emotional classes, the curriculum that we have, like a big piece of it is around collaboration. And a lot of times, I'll kick a project off with a picture book, and some of the picture books, a lot of them, even though they might be about maybe a STEM activity or something, that we're tying into the curriculum, having that underline, especially nowadays, there's so many books that when they're talking about STEM and they're talking about like technology or something that we want our kids to do, they can see that collaboration and them working together, but being just really upfront and honest with the kids about that piece. And it can be tricky for kids sometimes, but I think that's a really important part of the process. And, the teachers sometimes let the kids self-select. It just kind of depends on the classroom. But a lot of times the teachers will strategically to, mix up the groups, but put them with people that they work really good with together, but also switching up who they work with, giving them lots of variety, lots of choice, making sure that you're part of that. It doesn't, just because the kids are working on something, I always tell the teachers, like, it doesn't mean that you can just sit back. Like, you have to be an active part of what is happening too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, it's kind of the younger you are in these collaboration situations where conflict arises, it's like, it's good to learn at a young age and like practice these skills earlier on and how to resolve conflict in a respectful way. So because it's something that you're gonna live with for the rest of your life. So it's good to learn as early as you can. So I love that.
Absolutely.
We have another question from someone in the audience that says they love these ideas of allowing students to pursue their own interests, but how do you find the time / get permission from your admin to foster these processes?
So my job used to be like teacher librarian. And then I left for a few years and came back to Van Meter. And the big goal of what they saw when I wasn't there to when I came back is that the collaboration really just stopped. And so that's when we really wanted to not only focus on what I did as a teacher librarian, but focus on the innovation. Like, what was I bringing to the classrooms every time I collaborated? And so anything really, like, I really don't get permission from people to the projects that we do, because they tie into, we're always making sure that they tie into something that's going on in the classroom. If it's something within the curriculum, if it's something cultural, if it's something that, promotes diversity within our school, if it's promoting literacy. And, sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch, say that we want to bring something and, I sit there and think like, okay, how can I tie this into whatever I'm doing? But it usually works out, really great. And sometimes kids, especially this year, they just need a little bit of a break and, giving the teachers some of that support as well. But I'm lucky because I am not on a fixed schedule anymore. I used to be in the library all the time, but I'm not on that fixed schedule now. And so I just go to school and I get to do this, like, and also my library, jobs I have to do too when it comes to the collection and things like that. But I get to do these projects like all day long within my role. So it's really great. But I had a student teacher last week, Tara, and she is working on her master's degree. She's a librarian already. And we talked a lot about that, how, she's still in a fixed time, but like how it could work. And even though I used to be in that fixed time where it was hard to have these like projects, like really trying to get to that point where you have time to be able to do this, like, thinking how you could flex that time more, how you could bring this more in other than just teaching, in isolation, those library skills that we need to teach, or maybe the curriculum that you're teaching. How can you kind of bring some of this together and really make it a more exciting for the kids too?
Yeah, that's awesome. And going off that question, we have another question that is, the teacher reaches out to you and you're not familiar with the topic they're working on. What are your first steps to take to create a collaborative lesson?
So when they reach out and they want to collaborate, a lot of times, like, it might be like I go to a first meeting and I just kind of listen to what is going on in their classroom. Like, listen to if they have an idea, or maybe they say like, we're doing the westward movement right now. Like, what could we do with that to make it more exciting? That's what we're working on right now in third grade. And so the first meeting might really be even short, and I'll ask them for like any materials, like what have you already done? Where are you at in the like unit or process, what you're doing? And if there's any goals, like say that a project, maybe they want to do something with the 3D printers or with robotics or with unreleased splats, and they want to actually like assess the kids on what they create. So then I'll go back and I'll just kind of start, brainstorming, and I'll kind of take their ideas. I also look at and I think about what they've already done that year, because I want to make sure we're doing a variety of things. And then I'll meet with them again a few days later, the next day, and I'll kind of lay out what I am thinking. And usually I will go back in the classroom and then I'll support the teachers or that team in these projects that we're doing. But, there's lots of great resources out there, like anything that you use. If it's Bunsey, they have the Ideas Lab. Unreleased Splats, they have all the lessons that you're looking for. With Ozobot, they have just scads of lessons. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can kind of get the basis of what they're trying to do, the things that they've already done, and then go and look at some of these great resources, and even like looking at social media or reading like a company's blog or reaching out to them and asking. It's one big tip I have is if you have a question about something, like write them on Twitter or write them an email and, tell them, what you're kind of thinking. And they're just always so great at helping as well.
Yeah, it's always very fun. Our school success team has a blast when we get to go into the classrooms and see the students too and teach a lesson. It's always really fun, and especially in person too. Great. So Shannon, do you have any examples of middle school and high school with collaborative learning?
Well, I think that almost all of these examples could be used for middle and high school, even though they didn't specifically show kids. Like, I always think in my head, like when my teachers in our high school see these, or sometimes it might start in the high school and we work them down to our elementary, but our kids have created video games this year. My son created one over I don't know, a cell, and it was some story, and he's a sophomore in high school. 3D printing, Unruly splats, like how could you use them? And so just think about, not so much like getting stuck on what grade level you just saw in a project, but how could you tie it into and collaborate with the kids on something that they were doing, no matter what age they are. And it does really work. And our older kids, a lot of times our older kids will see something like on our school Instagram that I've done with our younger ones, and they'll say like, we want to do the Ozobots, Mrs. Miller, or the Spheros or whatever. And so I collaborate with them, high school teachers and middle school, and we figure out a way to tie that in. But I think any of these things, that's the great thing, is they can be used, with any age level that you're working with.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to like tie back in student-led learning, as the students get older. Like let's say you had unruly spots and then they grow up and they're in high school. And then when you want to introduce coding again, maybe you pull some of those students in as mentors, and then they teach those students how to code and play the game too. So you could definitely incorporate student-led learning and collaboration by like everyone teaching each other.
Our elementary kids teach our high school kids. So
the other way around.
It's the other way around. Like
awesome.
I asked my high school kids to come down and teach them, it wouldn't be nearly as effective. So we have, especially really any age, but we've even had our second graders teach our high school kids how to do things. And so it's really great. Awesome. And like I said, you don't have to be in the same room. Even that's one of the big ahas for me this year has been, we don't have to be in the same room. Like we could always use Zoom, or maybe you see, just like the knitting with Tommy, find somebody that isn't even in your town or school and, teach them and kind of brainstorm what they can do to collaborate with, whatever grade level or age level they are with something certain. So lots of opportunities.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I love that. How it's especially as you get these new technologies, you want to share it with everyone. So the age really doesn't matter. It's the excitement of the technology. That's great. Cool. I think we'll end with one more question and then we can wrap up. The last question I see is, how can we teach research skills in a more fun way and making it student-centered rather than a lecture-based classroom setting?
Yeah. So how I teach research and how we really try to encourage the teachers as well is to teach research on a level that, especially when they're really young, on something that they really love, to learn about, what do they want to learn? And just like the butterfly project, it might be something that maybe in a younger grade, they vote on what they're going to research, but it's something that they're passionate about. And as soon as you can hook them, when you're doing research on something they're passionate about, then as they get older, or as they do another project, during, the school year, you can teach them still those skills. You can teach them how to use, databases and ebooks, and how to write things, and how to pull together all the citations that they're using. But I think if we hook them with something that they're really passionate about, and teach them those skills, then it will stick. It becomes more stickier, and then it will carry them through, when they're working on things. My son is a sophomore now, and we did this big project. He was in 3rd grade around the rainbow loom bracelets, and we did all this research, and it was their idea, and it turned into this really great thing. And it was just neat because he learned these skills that, he's used now even in high school.
Wow. That's a really great example. I love that. That's all we have. So thank you so much for attending. Please feel free to follow each of us on Twitter. Our Twitter accounts are here. If you have any more questions about unreleased plots, we have our website link here, and it should be posted in the chat right now too. So definitely check that out. But thank you so much, Shannon, for sharing all your stories and tips. It's just, you have so many, and they're all so cute and fun. That's awesome.
Thanks for having me today.